I'm Janvi from The Wire, and I'm here today with Shambhawi, Vikram and Avantika Tiwari from Pinjra Tod, which is a campaign that started in August last year, so nearly 9 months ago, about issues that women hostelers face, mainly in Delhi, but they've also, I think, had participants from all over the country. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the movement, how it's grown. Recently, that campaign has led to the Delhi Commission for Women issuing a notice to all registered universities in the city, asking them to explain discriminatory policies and also give a list of all the students that live in their hostels and the fees they charge, because often what they've discovered is that the fees charged of women hostelers is a lot higher. So let's start with how it all began in August last year.
So basically, some of us had gotten to know each other through these other movements that were happening in the university spaces and otherwise. And so we were in constant conversation with each other, and movements such as these have been happening over the past few years. So there was Break the Curfew in 2013 in Stephens, there was a movement in 2007 in Ramjas, there was another one in Nanda House. So, and every time what would happen was that the administration would maybe tweak with the rules a little bit, push the deadline by another hour, and when that batch passed out, the rule would then be rolled back. So in what happened in August was Jamia administration issued a notice saying that we are cancelling all night outs in your best interest, and this was put up. So Delhi Commission of Women issued a notice and said that this was gender discrimination, and this was the first time that a government body had recognized that this was a form of gender discrimination within the university space. So we then came up with a petition, and then we built up. Then what happened was then we made a Facebook page, and then suddenly stories started pouring in from not just Delhi, from all over the country. So there were people from Jaipur and Patiala and Patna and Kerala sending us their hostel rules and talking of how in some hostels you're not even allowed to keep your cell phone. The warden can snatch away your phone and check your messages. So I mean, just the fact that this was being practiced all over. And then it was also important to call out the fact that Jamia being a minority institution, there's always the danger of, even the media perceiving it as an issue of it being a minority institution and therefore it being so suffocating for women, whereas these kind of rules exist invariably across all hostels. So when we wrote the petition, and we had a 2-month-long intensive campaign last year, which built towards the Jan Sunwai that was held at Jantar Mantar, where a lot of women came up, they shared their stories, and we had a member from BCW there, we had some of our feminist comrades, we had Uma, Pioli, Swatija and Janki, and then we submitted the petition, and Delhi Commission of Women had said that we had submitted a charter of demands, which was accepted, and then we had further negotiations. So we'd like to take it on.
Yeah, that's what happened. And so after that, so basically then we were getting a lot of stories from say across all over India, and we then decided that we should continue the fight. And what did we do after that?
Yeah, so the Jan Sunwai, before the Jan Sunwai, there were several little things that happened basically. So our basic plan was to go into hostels and talk to women, have a little. So we had a parcha, and we would try to get signatures. And then, but when you would approach women, they would just start telling their own stories. So they'd be like, "Oh, you know what my warden did to me? Do you know this? What she said?" And so there was this sense of humiliation, anger that these people had within themselves, and that everybody, that every woman hosteler in Delhi had this one thing in common. So. And from that, what happened was the first round of postering that we did in Delhi University. There's this wall of democracy where you go up and put up posters, and so there were posters by ABVP which were basically about thanking students for electing them as their students' union president. So we put up posters there, and then we got some threatening calls to our members, which were violent and sexually abusive in that sense. And so what happened, and we have a small WhatsApp group where we generally discuss and plan, which is where most of the planning happens, other than the larger meetings that we have. also just to stress that this is not like Pinjra Tod is not an organization. We try to maintain a collective space. So so we put up the messages, that this so and so has happened, and then everybody will just responded immediately. And so at 2 in the night we made a Facebook event because all of us as women have experienced that the police is very reluctant. If you go up to them and want to file an FIR, they will actively discourage you from doing so. So we made the event at 2, and then at 10 in the morning there were about 70 people in the police station, and the police had to file the FIR. So, and then the media really picked it up. So I'll just do you want to, and then the media, and then it was very interesting. So in those 3 days we encountered all kinds of journalists. There were some very good journalists who had their own stories to tell of them being hostelers in university spaces, but there was also some kind of stories which could not hide their discomfort with our movement. So you have little things like women claim sexist rules in hostels and sexist in inverted commas. You have one journalist saying देश की बेटियां आज़ादी मांग रही हैं, पर आपको नहीं लगता आपको ज़्यादा आज़ादी मांग रही हैं? And at which all of them were like, पहले तो हमें बेटी बोलना बंद कीजिए, because that is the problem in itself. This whole infantilizing of women that happens as soon as you come to university by the administration. So all of that was the reason why, and then there was this statement by Smriti Irani. So I'm just basically charting out the journey last semester. And so Smriti Irani went on and said that I don't think women in India are not free. They are free to do anything that they want to. They are free to wear whatever they want to. Nobody tells them what to do. So in response to which we thought we should educate our minister, and we prepared a small gift where we had all our hostel rule books, and we went to her office and we wanted to give it to her. So
but of course we were stopped.
And so all of that happened, and then the police was like, and they're like, हम बोल रहे हैं protest नहीं है, it's just a gifting ceremony. We just want to gift our minister so she knows what is the real situation in hostels.
So what comes through is there's some kind of a naivety also from the administration when they are responding to us. So at every point, whenever we try to stage a protest or enlist our demands, what comes through is that there's a reluctance even to accept that there is a problem in the first place. So this mode of denial, and also by reiterating the fact that you are somebody's daughter, would your parents be comfortable with this kind of an idea or this kind of protest, or do they know that you are a part of the movement? So there's always that kind of a reluctance. So I remember when this is much later, much recent in that sense, when on the 8th of March we had decided to put up our list of demands to the Vice Chancellor. We weren't allowed entry.
In our own university.
In our own university, that is our space, and it's not like we hadn't foretold, like we had, notified them that there will be some kind of we had taken appointment and prior permission to do the same. But we were stopped at the gate. But what's interesting is that the university then sends 3 women representatives. So that kind of tokenism, that you are women, we are also women, and we do understand your, plight. But there was always this kind of reluctance in engaging with the movement as such, by then reminding us that this is a larger security concern. And nobody, in Pinjra Tod, we're not saying that there is no security concern. We're trying to empty out the whole security rhetoric, which is actually done so by securitization of women. And we understand that the answer to address security concerns is not by locking up women. In fact, providing an alternative model. So that, and
Let's talk a little bit about the issue itself. So what are all these problems that you saw happening in university spaces and hostels that women were facing? Some of the experiences, not rules, and also the way they were treated. Talk a little bit about that.
So one thing we need to recognize is that women, they're coming from different vantage points. They're all accessing the university differently. So if you're from a certain caste background, or if you're disabled, or your social position is such that you cannot, just to be able to access the university space itself is so emancipatory in the first place. So we have taken account of that fact. But at the same time, then why don't you go ahead?
So just to so in the name of security that we are keeping you safe, which is actually, there's an underlying anxiety around women's sexuality, their autonomy, that they might go out and exercise their right to choose a partner. So in behind that logic, what hostels have rules are like, you should be back by 7 or 8. So for instance, in Khalsa has rules like it has a deadline of 6:30 for winter, 7 for autumn, and 7:30 for summer. So there are places where so I used to live in a PG, and my PG had 5 floors, and so 3 of the floors were owned by one person and the rest of the 2 were owned by another. And so they had different curfew times. So in the same building, we had women who were coming into the building to be kept safely at different times. And there was a lock it was locked right in the middle. So at the 3rd floor, there was a huge lock, and we could not even access the terrace after that. And this one night, it was in 2011, there was an earthquake, and so all the people in the ground floor and 2nd floor ran out, while the people on the top 2 floors were locked up.
So that's when you actually get to know that, women themselves are experiencing life and negotiating patriarchy so differently. So it's no surprise then that a lot of women have shown, reluctance in engaging with the movement as such, because they think that this is some kind of an urban radical elite movement, and it's not addressing the demands of, say, people who are coming from, say, small towns, and for them, this security concern is actually very valid. They don't want to be out on the streets, say, after 8 p.m. because they don't have much business to do outside, or that's at least the impression that they have. I mean, you've been told so repeatedly, so you begin to internalize it, right? So even when we spoke to a lot of women, I think even across DU, the parental concern is something which keeps coming through. And another thing is that, we are here to study and not do politics. So a lot of times we've been asked, so are we affiliated with, say, any left groups or left parties or whatever, party politics in that sense. So yeah, there have been various concerns even from women, and we've managed to talk through it.
So as a campaign, how did you deal with that sort of reluctance from women, not even from the outside?
So whenever I have gone on to campaign, so there have been 3 kinds of response. Either they'll be very excited and they'll be like, yes, I mean, I'm in and I want to be a part of Pinjra Tod, please add me on the room. So, or the second will be like, I really agree with you, but I don't know what if, because I don't know what I will say to my parents. And the third will be like, so they will just distance themselves.
Yeah, and surprisingly, a lot of women from, say, hostels like LSR, Stephens, they have actually been the ones, you would expect them to be really progressive, blah, 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 whatever. But what happens is that they are the ones who are the most comfortable with their deadlines. Because if you look at it, Stephens apparently has a deadline of, say, 10 p.m. So they find it relatively better off than other colleges. So there wasn't much engagement from Stephens at first. And even with LSR, it was very difficult for us to then explain to them that, it is not just about our relative independence in accordance with the general standard, which is already so poor, which has been set for us. So just to break through that, that first level of, engagement has been sort of challenging at first.
In some places, because there's this kind of myth of, equality and we are already in a very liberal space and we have done enough. And so in that sense, it's not just the question of the curfew, that the time be extended by a certain few hours. It's about the larger question that the institution is working with patriarchal notions, and as such, is it then a space that women as students are accessing equally or not? So if men and women students are coming to the university and you are locking up women at 8 while your libraries are open till 12, you are essentially denying her access to university resources 4 hours every day of the year. And you can still go on to function with that logic by telling them that, oh, we are keeping you safe.
That's true.
So it's been also about questioning the kind of biases that the university is functioning with. And so,
then that is the political imagination of the university space, right? It should be enabling instead of, it telling you that, the fact that you have actually managed to break the shackles of domesticity and entered the university space is itself a matter of celebration. We need to actually go beyond that. We need to go beyond the formalistic equality notions and substantively demand some kind of equality, which is why we continually reiterate that it's not just about curfew, it's for us to recognize this parental state police nexus, this complex which keeps us within the cages despite the cages having broken or say, tweaked around a little.
Yeah.
So,
And a lot of your demands also go beyond the curfew. Maybe talk a little bit about the other demands. The one that is most mentioned because of your name, I guess.
Pinjra
is the curfew.
So like the whole of the first semester, we were biggest battle was to establish that hostels are a Pinjra and that what is the nature of the Pinjra.
Yeah.
But as such, there are several other problems. So in Delhi University, most of the South Campus colleges do not have a hostel at all. So, and in terms of boys' hostel and women's hostel, the number of seats for women's hostel is very less. The fees is higher, so we did a study which in which we found out that women pay 3,000 every month more than male students. The reason for which was that UGC, all these hostels are being built now. So because the university opened its doors to women, after it opened its doors for men, the men's hostel had been built already by the funding the UGC provided then, and now UGC does not fund these hostels, and so these hostels charge more fees so that they can pay the workers. And so in that sense, in a way, women are being penalized for entering the university later, for the fact that they are accessing this space maybe a generation or two later than men are. There's so many women who are first-time learners in the family. There are women coming from working class backgrounds. There are women coming from Dalit Bahujan families. And so Hindu hostel with a fees which was 3 times more than the men's hostel. In essence, the kind of space that you're creating within the hostel, you're saying that only a certain section of people can access the hostel. So, and for women, hostels are very important. So a lot of parents do not send their daughters to study if they do not get a hostel. So hostel becomes a priority, and it's more important for a woman to have that space in a city. So if you're moving from say the northeast or from Bihar or Kerala or Rajasthan, you're coming to Delhi, and that one room that you have in the hostel is the one space, which is that's the only space that you have in the city basically. And so even punishments if you're late for 5 minutes, your warden can tell you will let you be on the street for the night. There was this one instance in LSR where a girl was hospitalized and she could not inform the warden about the number of, or she might have extended the number of leaves. So she was suspended from the hostel for 14 days. So how can you deny a student who's coming to the city on the basis of the fact that she has that one room in the city, and then which will enable her education? How can you deny her that for 14 days?
So yeah, and other than that also, one, you recognize that there is not enough accommodation for women. 2, the prices are high. 3, because there are not enough hostels, women are forced to go stay in PGs, rent out places. Then again, you have various forms of discrimination which are also sort of considered okay because, tenancy laws are such that it's on the discretion of the landlord to tell whether they want to take in a person or not. So then PGs become a part of the problem, and the fact that they're not regularized is something that we are pointing at. Then the problem of say sexual harassment and how pervasive it is, and it's not just in the university space but all across. Then how is it that the university is going to play a more active, proactive role in curbing sexual harassment, just the way we've seen it in the anti-ragging movement? So I think the DCW has also recognized that that's something which it needs to address and has agreed to create more awareness around the same.
Based on something you've already talked about a little bit, and maybe you can go a little deeper, we've had a question from a viewer, Manisha Chachra, and she's asking how the campaign has basically looked at the issue of intersectionality. So you talked a little bit about women who are hesitant. So she's talking about people who are maybe coming from small towns or rural areas, who have a different idea of what their security is, of what their freedom is, and how has the campaign negotiated with that, if it has, is what she wanted to ask you.
So basically, we have had, for somebody who's coming right from her house, where probably the deadline for her was 5. And so even having a deadline of 7 is a big thing. So she'll be like, I'm quite happy with that. But the point is that the university administration cannot keep, keep producing the same patriarchal model that goes on in families, first of all. Second, this whole bit about, how you're told right from when you're young, that you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to go out. Why? Because you're unsafe. And so basically creating this space outside of the house, the public space, is this unsafe space where you must not go out. And so when you come to Delhi and you're living on your own, and you're learning to negotiate public space, you do lack the kind of confidence that is needed. And this happens from the kind of conditioning that happens over the years. So one of our Pinjra Tod campaigners raised this very well, and she was like, confidence kahan se aayega? So it's not in a sense that women are opposing because they do not want it, or because they have been told that you're not supposed to be out, or so many things are going to happen, because there is this model of a good woman and a bad woman. If you are in the house, if you're listening to the rules, if you're going by them, you're a good woman. If you're not, then you're a bad woman. So you are penalized for it.
But at the same time, that's not to discount the political agency of women who choose to stay at home. So, I mean, when we are looking at the question of intersectionality, it is not to say that only the women who are raising such demands are bona fide activists or are a face of an authentic women's liberation struggle. It is not to say that. One has to recognize their own limitations as part of a movement, and we do not say that, we are the voice of women as a monolith. So that is something that we are also trying to work on and rethinking in our own position. It's not a very nice thing to say that we are champions of women's liberty, and we do understand the limitation of intersectionality, but we're trying to negotiate it in our own ways by, say, there was a Dalit workers protest which is happening right outside the Dhaka complex. So at that time, it was for us to also rethink how are we supposed to lend in our solidarity. It's just one thing to say that, we are in solidarity with you, but it's quite another to proactively go and then negotiate those spaces for them or with them. And it's important to learn that it's with them, not for them, not giving them a voice, but recognizing, stepping back. It's not to say that everybody has internalized misogyny in this world and they're all staying inside only because of their social conditioning. It can also be an active choice. So it's not to discount that.
And you mentioned before about how there are also other kinds of discrimination that come into play about persons with disabilities, mainly based on caste, based on where you're from. There's a lot of discrimination against people from the Northeast. Is that something you came across also during your campaign when people shared their experiences?
Yeah, definitely. Some of the people are doubly marginalized, and you have to recognize that. It could be based on regionality, it could be based on their caste or social position. And definitely there are a lot of prejudices and shame and stigma which is associated to, say, the Northeastern women. I mean, we have this one play which is, we've been staging it across Delhi. So the street play actually got picked up very well by people, but we also have to then see how people are taking, what they are taking out of it. So there was this one policeman who had actually observed the play, after which he said, "You're absolutely right, Northeastern women hamara kabada kar rahi hai." Okay. So then again, how do you then, actually send out the right message without people's own biases then framing and, creating something out of something you're not trying to convey. But yeah, when we've also spoken to a lot of women from the Northeast, and
so so landlords can openly say things like, "Oh, ये हमारा culture खराब करेंगी, हमारी बेटों को बिगाड़ेंगी," and we met some visually impaired students. So for the visually impaired male students, there is a hostel by Delhi University that provides them free accommodation, and the women students are provided a few seats here and there, and the rest of them live with this NGO far off. And so by talking to them, a lot of questions emerged, So in terms of when you set a deadline, it's also about mobility. The mobility of a person who's not visually impaired and the mobility of a person who is visually impaired is not the same. You cannot have the same kind of deadline. Even within the hostel, in terms of when you have to go and mark your attendance, the warden can just be anywhere in the hostel. So these women are basically, they have this 1 hour to get their food and to run around the hostel to find the warden to show their face that we are in the hostel. There were cases of where the administration has not paid them the writer's fee for like months. So all of these cases started coming up when we went out to campaign in the hostels.
Yeah, a lot of Kashmiri women are still negotiating whether they can even wear the hijab or the kind of prejudices, and it's something which is coming out of a daily struggle. We cannot abstract it and extrapolate a movement just out of that abstraction. There are real women, they're confronting patriarchy on a regular basis. So yeah, you get to hear a lot of different stories, and then you have to rethink your own position while you confront those stories.
You mentioned before that you lived in a PG while you were studying. So that's a lot of women students have to do because hostels are limited. So majority of them are, I would think. And they have rules that are often worse than hostels, conditions that are worse than hostels, and they're basically at the mercy of a person who is not under any other authority. There's no regulations. Do you have any suggestions about that? Experiences you've heard about that?
So, I mean, we have PGs that charge like 20,000 for a room that a person has to share with 3 other people, but they'll give you a rent receipt of only 10,000 rupees. So there is no accountability. So, and we've heard stories of how landlords or the landlord's son has been harassing a certain woman, and you cannot speak up about it because they'll be like, why don't you just leave the PG? And then there is this issue of security money where they charge you the rent for 2 months, which is the security money that they take right at the beginning of the session. And so they'll be like, why don't you leave the hostel, and they're not going to give you your 20 or 40,000 rupees, which is a big amount. So in that sense, and most of your women students are living in PGs, and that is a reality that the university has to acknowledge. What we are asking of the university is that they should be working on regularizing these PGs and of basically coming out with a list of recommended PGs in which there is some kind of mechanism to keep a check on what are the kind of facilities that are being provided. If the women residents are having any issues, they can come up to the authorities and talk about it. Whether the rent is within control, all of this.
And creating more ICCs and actually making them functional, because we know for a fact that they do exist, but they're nominated bodies and not elected bodies. So are they really female-friendly spaces in that sense? So we want the ICCs to be functional.
The suction committee report, so basically now, while JNU has GS Cash and Ambedkar University is also adopting its own policy, in PU there is no such. I mean, so the administration will be like, we have displayed the number, and there is a committee, but when we went out to talk to the students, they did not even have a working definition of sexual harassment. So they did not know, they did not have the vocabulary. And so when we told them, this is what constitutes sexual harassment, then they had 10 stories to tell. So that is also a sad state of affairs. In administration, there is a provision in Sanction Committee which says that, the guidelines says that, there should be gender sensitization workshops. So for ragging, you have all these big hoardings, you have an anti-ragging affidavit, and now ragging is actually, been effectively curbed by the administration because of the kind of discourse they have set up. So, I mean, why are they so reluctant about sexual harassment? Why are they taking it so lightly?
And this is also an issue that goes beyond universities and beyond Delhi. And one of our viewers, Avantika, has just asked a question about whether you have any plans to take this elsewhere and how you would do that.
Take this elsewhere. Surprisingly for us, a lot of things just emerged on their own without us having to activate agents like that. They're already self-activated individuals. Like, we got a story from Patiala, wherein the women students actually sat outside
and Lucknow also.
In Lucknow, in fact, also. So they actually effectively extended the timing to 10 p.m. And this was completely on their own. Then recently, there was a huge procession which took place near the Dhaka complex because women students were not given enough water facilities, and at the time of admission they were already made to sign an affidavit which said that if they're not given certain kind of like food and water, if there is water shortage, then you cannot protest. So there was some kind of a disciplinary action which they were threatened against, but they broke this they broke the shackles and they completely came out.
And we actually do have a WhatsApp group from Pune, Chennai, Kolkata, Bangalore, and Patiala, and some people in Patna also. So we do, people keep writing in their stories, and so in that sense it's not for us to do. We cannot go and transpose Pinjra Tod there. It is something for them to do, and we will be very inspired ourselves by their struggles. And people are doing, it's happening in so many universities right now. Women are coming up, and so in Manu, for instance, in Hyderabad, women just came up and they tore off the attendance registers and burnt them down. So
and a similar thing is happening in AMU right now. So it's not for the movement to take itself somewhere, but because you see the kind of repression, and a lot of people are just themselves coming to us, or at least in their own ways adopting the movement and giving it a new angle also. We are also seeing it in a new light every time it gets picked up somewhere else.
Yeah. And just for Pinjra Tod itself, now that DCW has taken this up, do you have any plans for within Delhi, how you're going to take this forward?
So, we first of all, we're waiting for the university administration to respond within 15 days and looking to make out from the data what we already know. And then there's this other set of notices that we're expecting about sexual harassment.
Okay.
So, we intend to negotiate with the administration separately. And the students, and the fact that there are students now within every college, university who have been part of Pinjra Tod. So, we intend that they will be able to come out and question administration themselves.
Other than that, we were also thinking of maybe having a whole round of RTIs, just to substantiate our demands with authentic documentation, just so that we have a legal backing.
Maybe a PIL in the future. But just another bit that, Pinjra Tod has also been about finding this feminist collective space, which is the kind of space that we've been able to create, and that we have been able to then participate in other student movements also with that, and being able to make those interventions and those critiques. So Pinjra Tod as a space is very important for us, and we intend to
preserve that space and
to
expand it. So we were also thinking of maybe having study circles, or just giving women a platform on which they can come, they can express their, share their experiences, and then maybe we'll have a, however we can.
So I think we'll wrap it up with that. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing where this goes.
Thank you.